Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fresh Air Bookworms, where we talk about books while being outside. And we are taking advantage of this beautiful day. I know it looks like spring is here and the snow is almost gone, but we do live in Canada. I always call this fake spring, and I'm preparing for second winter because we're still in March, but we're talking about February books, but we're in March now. I think there'll be a second winter. I'd be surprised if we didn't. But yeah, we're going to take advantage of a beautiful day to talk about my February reads this year. So I read 11 books this month, which was a lot. I seem to be driving a lot, so I was able to get through a lot of audiobooks. And in that 11, there's quite the assortment of books, which we will get into. Okay, so my first book for February was The Nightingale by Kristin. And this book follows two sisters during World War II in France. It follows their journey as they deal with the war. Their home is being taken over by German soldiers. And so we follow the older sister. There's quite an age gap between the two sisters. So the older sister, Vienne, she feels like she has to protect her family, her child, and her friends and her family. So the decision she makes, we may not agree necessarily, especially when she is forced to house a German soldier. This makes for high tensions and really walking on eggshells because you don't want to say the wrong thing because you're alone trying to take care of your family in this mess of a situation. During that time, her younger sister Isabel really does not like this situation. She's very much we need to do something, we need to take action, we need to fight back. We can't let them just walk all over us and take what is ours. So she decides that she wants to help the resistance and she will guide shot down allied, so men that are flying and they get shot down and behind enemy lines. There's a group that saves these guys and then she guides them back over the mountains to the safe side, to the allied side. So it's very different stories for two women. It's two very different intriguing stories into one. Yeah, this was a fun read. You're all over the place. There's high tension. It's heartbreaking when you see the destruction of World War II and everything. So this was a really great read. Definitely recommend it. I haven't read any other Kristin. I might pick some up. I've heard good things about some of the other books, so maybe you'll see another one on the list here this year. Okay, so the next book I read was The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This book is the fourth book in the inheritance game world. This one, it doesn't focus on Avery now. We're from the point of view of Grayson and Jameson, two of the brothers, and they each have their own little missions. So kind of similar idea to the Nightingale, but rich kids trying to find who they define themselves because now they don't have their money. So each one kind of has like their own thing. Grayson discovers his biological father's family and kind of gets entwined with them and helping them with their problems. And then Jameson gets recruited by his dad to go to London and join the secret society club so they can play this like exclusive game. So there's things. I do like it better than the first three books. Not they're okay. Wasn't like a life-changing book. It was fun sometimes, but I'm kind of interested more with like there's like another like series that's going in the same world, and I'm curious where that's gonna go. So I'll keep going into it. I think the next one's the Grandest Games, so we'll see how that goes. Chickadee. Oh, their bird just landed on my phone. They're very curious about it. Sorry. So, okay, so the next book that I read in February was Carrie, Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I really need to do a series on just Taylor Jenkins Reid's books because I need to reread them and rank them because I seem to enjoy every single one that I've read of hers. So I'm very curious if the rereads happen, if they'll fall in my ranking or like where they would end up. But this one I think was a step above most of her books that I've read so far. This one follows Carrie Soto, who is a famous tennis player in her 20s, and she sets a whole bunch of records and eventually has to retire due to an injury. So quite a few years go by, and she's just kind of just living life, and she sees that there's this new tennis star coming up to the plate and is about to break her records. She does not like that, so she decides to come out of retirement in her late 30s to try and win another tournament so that this person does not break her record, so that she's still relevant. So the story is so interesting. First of all, it's such a nice change to have a 37, 38-year old as our main character. I've been reading too much fantasy lately where everybody is between the age of 17 and 23, and it doesn't resonate as much, obviously, because I am 30. And so it's such a nice change of pace to have a character that's lived life. She's learned more, but she hasn't. Like, she's still learning because she is not a well-loved character. Like, she's kind of not the nicest person, is the nice way to say it. And so sometimes it's really hard to root for her because of the way she treats people. But then when you see the complexity of like how she grew up and how she how her brain has developed, that it just kind of makes sense that that's why she is. But then we also see a redemption arc. There's a lot. I really enjoyed this. I don't know a whole lot about tennis. I'm curious if this is an accurate representation of tennis, but I did learn a lot of how to play, so can't say that I would actually be able to hit anything, but I understand when people are talking about different things that they do. I can kind of pick up on that. So yeah, I think this is a great book. I look forward to rereading it, especially like the other books, just to see where it lands on my favorite of her books. So the next book I read was Night by Elie Wiesel. So this one, it's kind of a memoir, but kind of not. It is his story, but I think he's kind of changed a little bit of round. I'm not sure how much, but like I think there's some things that are tweaked a little bit. But this follows his story of when he was living in his home in Hungary just before the occupation by the Nazis in Hungary. So we kind of see how slowly like propaganda and the government, how things are changing and policies were being made to kind of slowly turn people away from wanting anything to do with the Jewish people. So it's interesting in that sense. And then we follow him as he's taken and they're forced into these small ghettos and then eventually taken from those ghettos to Birkenau, where he's separated from his mom and his sister. and him and his dad are sent to a different work camp. So we follow as he is sent all over the place to all these horrendous conditions. So we see the true horrors of war and what happened to the Jewish people. And it's so crazy because, like, this book is so small, but the author is able to fit so many things into one. Like, we see him struggle with his faith, which is understandable in that kind of scenario. We see him having to come to terms with, like, his father's not being the strong one. So that is also interesting. And yeah, and then we just also see the brutality that humans can inflict on other humans, and it's just heartbreaking. I think it's a really good read. I think everybody should read it. It's like, I don't know why I read so many like World War II books this month, but it just felt fitting. And this one I think is definitely one that everybody should read at least once. There we go. I This is the tough part about spring or fake spring, is that everything melts, but then it's still cold enough that everything freezes over. So now I have to be very careful about where I step. Like here, I won't be surprised if I wipe out in this video at some point because it's been a few close calls. Another book that I read this month was The New Wilderness by Diane Cook. This one was recommended to me and I loved it. 5 stars. It was incredible. It begins by following this mother, and you see from her point of view as we it's like a futuristic dystopian where everybody has been forced to live in these cities and there's no nature except this one state. One state has the wilderness, and that's all that's left of nature. And so nobody was allowed in there. Everybody's been living in these cities, but then the air has become so polluted that children are dying because they're so sick from all this like horrendous air. So follow this mom B, and she I can't remember exactly, but her and her friends decide that they want to do an experiment where they want to be able to go to the wilderness, be unsupported for the most part, and see if they can live in the wild, live in the wilderness without leaving leaving their mark and like destroying nature. So Beatrice and her daughter Agnes, who's I think like 2 or 3 at the time, they go with a group of people to the wilderness to conduct this experiment. And while you're there, you really see like going bare minimum, like how hard it is, like the hard truth about living in the wilderness, but how freeing it is. And like obviously for some they have a harder time than not, but they seem to thrive and they seem to like be going well, but something happens where B and Agnes are separated for a bit, and we go to Agnes's point of view, to a person who where the wilderness is all she knows. Like she's heard stories of when she lived in the city, but she only has like glimpses of memory, but everything she remembers is like from the wilderness. So she's grown up in a world without the society, without these standards, and when they meet like other groups and stuff, she has to learn that like things are different in the city, and she doesn't understand like why do people care so much about these things, like looking pretty or like having like nail polish and stuff. She doesn't understand like why that's so important, but she can't help but be drawn to it because it's something different. And yeah, so we just see how she like just wants the importance of like wants to be in the wild, like she gets an opportunity to go back, but she doesn't want to because this is all she knows, and she knows this, and it seems like it's better out in the wilderness even though things are not easy. Yeah, so it's such a good book. It's heartbreaking because we see glimpses of why people can't have nice things, of people destroying the wilderness, not taking care of it. And it's really hard to see that, especially since I love being outside so much. some of the parts it was really hard to listen to, like hard to hear, like how people can just be like, whatever, tree is not going to care if I do this to it or whatever, but it does matter. And so, yeah, I thought it was a really good book. I loved that the relationship between mother and daughter is not what you would think it would be like. It's very different from anything I've read before. And so, yeah, I think it's worth reading. I loved it, and definitely want to read it again in the future. Okay, so the next book that I read in February was A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. So this book here, it was an interesting one. So this one, it follows this girl who starts talking to herself and hearing voices. So her family, they're not sure what's going on with her, what's going on, so they take her to the doctor. The doctors think she has some sort of schizophrenia. They're trying to deal with that. But then as time progresses, things get worse. The medical field isn't helping. So her dad, who's fairly religious, talks to like a priest and stuff and is convinced that his daughter is possessed. So because they've been spending all this money trying to fix Marjorie, they decide that they're going to conduct a reality TV show around her exorcism. So we're following through the younger sister's point of view. So we really see a child's point of view of everything's going on. So you don't quite know if what's happening is actually happening. It's really like you don't have the most reliable narrator, so it's quite interesting and it's scary at times, like the way that Marjorie sometimes acts towards her sister Mary and like everything that happens afterwards. It's quite crazy, but it's such a good book. I really enjoyed this one. I really liked having this point of view of this reliable unreliable narrator. Normally, like with most like thrillers, you can kind of like you can kind of see what's coming at the end. This one, I was always guessing like, oh, are we going to go this direction? And then we don't. So it was nice that it wasn't too predictable. Yeah, and some of the scenes when she's younger with her sister are actually like terrifying. And I couldn't imagine being a child going through that. So the fact that Paul Tremblay is able to put us in the mind of a young female child, I was surprised how well it did. But yeah, I totally think that this one is worth picking up. It's yeah, it was quite crazy where we went and I really enjoyed it. Okay. And so the next book I read was House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. So this one, I've heard people talk about it all the time, how much they loved it. So I managed to get it on a lucky days for my from my library. So jumped right into it. Was very excited. I had no idea what the storyline was. So it was quite fun. In my head, this is considered YA, but apparently it's not, just cuz the main character is an older man. But I don't know. I think it kind of flip flops between. I think it's worth for all ages to read. I think it's a great book. It's about this man who works in for this department where they regulate magic in like in his department they regulate it in or kids. So he's in that going to different orphanages, making sure that the kids are being treated well and that they can be productive members of society once they get older. He is put on this assignment, the secret assignment, top secret. He can't tell anybody about it, but he has to go far away to the ocean and on this little island just off the coast of this little town is an island that is a home to some of the most crazy magical children that nobody knows about them. They are top secret. And so he has to go there and investigate and make sure that this home is safe for the children and is supposed to send it back to headquarters. But while he's there, he meets these kids, and these kids are like very I've read lots of stories where you have like a home of peculiar children, and it's pretty like stereotypical of like what kids' power is and stuff. But these kids, like, the imagination behind each kid's power is actually like so well done. And even the one that the department is very concerned about is this little 6-year-old who is the Antichrist. So that was really interesting. You really get to learn that these kids are more than just what they're defined as. They're so much more than that. And I think there's great lessons in it. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. There was some really heartfelt moments in there with the kids and with the main character and with the caretakers and everything. Yeah. I think there's a second book. I would be very interested to read that one to see where we go with this, where we go with the story and see what happens with the kids if we see them get older. Okay, folks, this is the one you're probably been waiting for. Uh, Another book that I read this month, Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. Yeah, I think this book showed up on my feed so many times, and I was really not looking forward to reading it because I did not like Iron Flame. Fourth Wing's fine. Like it's basic, it's fine. It's an interesting story. Iron Flame, awful. Awful, awful, awful. So I really wasn't looking forward to this one. And so it finally popped up from the library. Thank you, library, for forcing me to read this book, or else I probably would never have read it. I mean, hmm, thank you is maybe being too nice with that. This one, obviously, 1 star. I really did not like this book. I was giving it hope that maybe there'd be some trajectory in the right direction. I mean, I can say for me, it was better than Iron Flame. Iron Flame was just there's too much unnecessary fighting over the same thing over and over again. So at least we didn't get this time. But yeah, this book, it was all over the place. We were trying to do so much world building, but it wasn't done well. So I just felt like I felt stupid reading it because I felt like, how am I am I dumb for not understanding what's going on? But I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I think it was just the writing was just not good. That almost it gaslights you into thinking that you're not smart when it comes to reading. I don't know. I had such a hard time like picturing things. Even every time she would describe like a fight scene, I just had the worst time picturing it in my head. Normally that's not an issue, but like here I didn't know what was going on. And it just felt like every mission that we went on, did it really need to be there? No, it didn't really pay off. And the way that we ended it, I was like, what was the point of all of that? And if you're going to tell me, like, I'm going to spoil some things because I have a lot of things to say. There's one island that they go to and they're given gifts and stuff. And you think that, oh, hey, those are going to come into play at some point. Like, there's going to be a purpose behind that rusty bucket and that little cat that was given to somebody. But in this book, we get none of it. There's no payoff with it. See, like, I could understand that somebody's going to come back with me on that and say, hey, she's just getting it ready and we're going to see it in the future books. Okay, I understand that, but at least one of those things should have paid off in this book so that there's some relevance to it. It just didn't make sense. If you're going to use those items, do it like so that I don't have to go back and be like, what did they get? I don't remember the purpose of this. Yeah. And then like bringing in characters and acting as if I'm supposed to know who they are, it drove me nuts. Drove me nuts. And especially like they actually brought in a villain who had some sort of complexity and then she's gone in the end. Like what was the point of her? I yeah, I don't know. There's just too much. I wanted to give it I wanted to be able to like it a little bit at least, but I could not. And then I'm just going to throw in a side note. Those unnecessary POVs, do not understand why those were there. Especially when Rhiannon, who is probably one of the best characters, was hardly in the book. We see her for a little bit in the beginning. We don't see her the whole rest of the book until the end, and then we get a POV of her. What? And it had nothing to project the story forward. I don't know. So, I could go on and on, but I'm going to wrap it up there. That's how I felt. If you guys did want a more further details on how I felt about that book, I guess put it in the comments. We'll see if I feel the need to talk about it again. I feel like I'm not the only one, but that's just how I felt. Okay, so I needed to take a walk after that last one. So the next book that I read in February was The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This is how you do a third book. Love this book. This was a fantastic way to end this series. We were introduced characters from previous books, but then we are reminded of why they are there and who they are, which I appreciated. That was great. We really see Rin in a tough scenario of like, is she good? Is she evil? She really has to debate that. I loved it. I loved this like inner turmoil that we have as a reader because we've been rooting for her this whole time. But now she's making decisions that we're like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? This is not right. And I really loved that. I loved the way it ended. Not everybody is gonna love it, I can tell you that, but I loved the way that this book ended. This whole series, it was so well written. It really takes you all over the place. We actually go places for a purpose and things happen for a reason. And yeah, I love the characters. It's heartbreaking sometimes because the way that you see the direction that they're heading and you're like, no, no, we've been cheering you on for this whole time, please don't do this. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic, well written. I love this world. I definitely will be reading more RF Kwang. My sister owns Babel. I will be reading that one. I've heard good things about it and I'd love to check it out. I'm very interested, very intrigued. Yeah, so if you're ever looking for a good fantasy series, this one is like I totally recommend it. I loved all the books. They were all so good. Okay, so the next book that I read was A Perilous Undertaking by Deanna Raybourn. This is the second book in the Veronica Speedwell mystery series. So we pick up where we left off with Stoker and with Veronica and their crazy adventures, butterfly catching and natural history, taxidermy things. This one, it's like you can tell it's part of like a bigger series. We follow Veronica as she ends up taking on a case to solve the mystery of this man who's been wrongly accused of murder. So we follow them as they kind of go through all these different places to find clues and find the truth of if the person that is being tried for murder is the culprit, and if not, who actually did the murder and why. So we really we have some fun. This one, it's such a great. I like these two. I don't normally like the grumpy sunshine, even though Veronica's not like super sunshine. She's more realistic and sciencey, super sciencey, and to the point. Well, Stoker is like stereotypical grumpy, but I like it. Normally, I don't like that kind of thing, but I love those two. I love the banter they have between the two of them. I love some of the new characters that we meet, like the Lady Wellantonia. I can't remember, but they always call her Lady Welly, and so I love her. She's so funny, like her little snide remarks and her little nits and picks and stuff. It's a fun ride. I really enjoyed it. We went places I didn't think we were gonna go, like a sex club was very interesting. I wasn't expecting going there, but I enjoyed the ride, and I just started the third one. Very excited to see where we go with that. Okay, folks, we made it to the end. My last book that I read in February was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. So this one was recommended to me. I know it's not a perfect book. There are things that are not like, there are some things that obviously could be better, but I actually had a really good time. This one, so we follow our lead, Evangeline, as she is heartbroken because the love of her life is engaged to her stepsister. And so she brings in this Jack of Hearts who makes a deal with her to prevent them from being married. You can't trust everything he says because everything he promises, there's like a twist to it. And so she ends up being frozen or like turned to stone, and then to break the spell, because they get turned to stone, but she ends up breaking it. But she wakes up like 6 weeks later and finds that she's like a hero, and she didn't real like that wasn't her intention to be considered a hero, because she's kind of the reason behind everything that happened. And then she ends up going to the royal area to meet the prince, because she's wanting to see if she can find true love, because her even after she broke the curse, her true love still didn't want her. So she goes on this journey to find someone else, and she realizes that part of her breaking this curse, she owes Jack of Hearts 3 kisses. And so she is then, while she's on this journey, she also has to pay back Jack for this bargain that she made with him. So it sounds kind of crazy. It took me a little bit to get into it, to understand where we were, but I actually really enjoyed where we went with it. The story, you thought it was going to be like cut and dry type of romance story, but it doesn't. We think that it's going to be like a lot. I thought there was going to be a lot more romance between our two main characters, but there wasn't. So I was really surprised. It didn't go places where I thought it was going to go, so I think that's why I liked it more. I like to be surprised. I don't always like to be able to tell how this is going to end. So I am very intrigued at how things ended. I won't go into that. How things ended there and where we're going to go in the second book. I don't know if there's ones after that, but I am excited to read the other ones. Those were my 11 books that I read in February. There was a lot of feelings. A lot of feelings were felt in many different ways, but it was a great read. I'm excited to share those with you. If you guys have any recommendations for future reads, put them in the comments below. Support your local library and go outside, have some fun. It's beautiful out. If it's beautiful out, take advantage of it. Feel free to, if you felt differently about any of these books that I read, I want to hear about it. I want to hear why you liked certain books. One in particular, I know maybe I might get some flack on, but I said what I said, and I'm not taking it back. That's how I feel. Yeah, thanks for joining me. We'll see you for the next video, and yeah, have a good day.